Welcome to Black Women's Health Podcast, a platform dedicated to promoting health and healing for Black women. I'm Dr. Rahman, and I'm a board-certified OBGYN. Too often women say they didn't know or understand, or no one ever explained their GYN condition, and they don't get their questions answered. So this segment of Black Women's Health is dedicated to providing answers to common GYN concerns. Today we're talking about abnormal uterine bleeding. Abnormal uterine bleeding can actually present in a number of different ways. For example, you can have bleeding in between periods, bleeding after sex. You could have no bleeding. You can have postmenopausal bleeding, or you could have excessive bleeding. All of these are examples of abnormal uterine bleeding, and all of these require evaluation and treatment. Doctors have used the acronym PALM-COIN, PALMCOEIN, to work through possible differential diagnosis for abnormal uterine bleeding. Last week, we spoke about polyps. This week, I will speak about adenomyosis. In order to understand adenomyosis, you need to know a little about the anatomy of the uterus. The uterus is essentially a container. The inside of the container is lined by a special type of hormonally responsive tissue called endometrium. The wall of the container is composed of muscle cells that are called collectively the myometrium. The two, endometrium, myometrium, are distinct and separate. They meet at what is called the junctional zone. When part of the endometrium penetrates into the muscular wall and the distinct separation between the two is lost, that is how we define adenomyosis. Today, the loss or distortion of the junctional zone can be seen on diagnostic imaging. Previously, the diagnosis could only be confirmed after surgical removal of the uterus. Because the diagnosis was often made after removal of the uterus, the actual prevalence of adenomyosis in the general population was difficult to determine, meaning that you could determine the prevalence among those who had had a hysterectomy, but you could not determine prevalence in the general population of women. Today, with diagnostic imaging, sometimes biopsy of the endometrium, the symptomatology, the diagnosis of adenomyosis can be made. And what is the symptomatology? Often, women with adenomyosis will complain of heavy, painful bleeding at the time of the menstrual cycle. It used to be thought that this was a GYN condition that affected women predominantly in their 40s and 50s. More recently, it has been identified as a cause of infertility in younger women. Treatment options for adenomyosis are either anti-inflammatory drugs such as nonsteroidals, ibuprofen, for example, hormonal medication, or hysterectomy. Next week, I will speak briefly about leiomyomas or fibroids as a source of abnormal bleeding. If you found this helpful, please leave a comment or share it with a friend. This is Dr. Rahman from Black Women's Health saying, until the next time, be well.